All right. It is exactly 4 p.m. Central Time, and I would like to get started. Thank you for joining the Accelerate Your Team's weekly Agile webcast. And please repost this link. Repost the link to this event to invite other people who can get benefit from it. They can also view it offline at their convenient time. And during the conversation, please feel free to ask your questions in the chat and put your comments there. It's on the right from the screen where you see it, where you see us. And I see that people started to comment there. Thank you so much. And just to check the technology, please type yes in the chat if psychological safety impacts you at work, and type no if it doesn't. And also type where you're calling from. It will be great to see people from different places. So again, please type your questions during the chat, during the call, and I will be monitoring the chat, and we'll try to address as many questions as we can. Welcome again. I am your host, Vladimir Bushin. I'm an Agile coach and Crucial Conversations trainer. I help companies build effective culture of teamwork and collaboration, and I'm very passionate about this. And today's topic is building psychological safety, a strategic guide for senior leaders. And attention here, we are going to do a drawing at the end of the call. Please stay tuned in till the very end. And I am very excited to introduce my guest, a human performance coach, Mike Pascoe. Mike Pascoe is the president and chief employee experience officer at Mental Wellbeing for Life. He's a passionate mental well-being advocate that has spent the last 30 years dedicated to growing an in-depth understanding of the brain-body connection and how it relates to optimizing the mental well-being, potential, and performance of people. Using this knowledge, Mike is committed to supporting the people within organizations with the strategies of how to create, coach, and support a people-centric mental well-being focused culture. Mike, it's a pleasure to have you today as a featured speaker here on my webcast.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vladimir. I really appreciate you having me here. I know that as an Agile coach, this topic is pretty close to your heart when you're dealing with the clients that you're dealing with. So I'm super excited. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Mike. And as we begin this very important topic, I just wanted to make sure that we cover all the bases. For those people in the audience who may not be very familiar with the concept of psychological safety, can you please tell us what the definition of psychological safety is and why psychological safety is important for modern companies that strive for success?
Well, I think it's really important just out of the get-go to sort of talk about psychological safety, because there's sort of two parts to it. There's people in the audience that are probably thinking about the strategic aspects of psychological safety, how to embed it in the organization. And then others are probably thinking about this more from the perspective of psychological safety being the action that we would do every day, meetings or things like that. So, I'm going to kind of start from a standpoint of what it's not, just to kind of make it a little bit clear around the strategy. So it's not a make work project. Okay, so it's not something where we're going to get into your organization and you're going to be trying to implement more and more processes. It really comes down to trying to make everything harmonized and to get together and to already use the incredible things that you're doing right now, and then putting that into a strategy, one employee experience strategy. And then the other part about that is that it's not this may be a shock to some people, but it's actually not a strategy unto itself. It's actually a tactic. So very much like DEI, wellness, code of conduct, respect in the workplace, any other part and piece of the employee life cycle, these are all tactics that would be guided by the employee experience strategy. So that's another really, really important part. But to talk about what it is, and I really don't want to destroy it here, so I'm actually just going to read it. Thinking about psychological safety, there's tons of different people that actually talk about this, of course. But as a psychological health and safety advisor, really, we kind of use this sort of our guiding light as, we won't be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. So when we think about it like that, I mean, it's a pretty simple idea, but I'm going to take it further, and I'm going to say that psychological safety is the foundation for every single relationship and for every form of communication on the planet. I've got actually a good example. I was actually chatting with an individual a while ago, and I saw a post by Vinay Raman. I don't know if he's actually on the show right now, but to show the trueness of this in our true life is that one day his wife said to him, what do you think of me in this red skirt or this red dress? And he stood there, and I'm not going to blow the story here, but that there is a moment that was determined by how the question was asked in the past and also how he answered the question. So that immediately provided sort of an insight that had that not gone well in the past, that future of that conversation or that right there would have been determined by the past. So there was sort of like a breakdown in trust, if we would speak. And then, for many of us on the call, we would kind of think of this from a workplace standpoint, and we would think, like bad behavior, bullying, abuse, harassment, and discrimination. If any one of those things happened in a workplace, whether it be a team environment or an organization as a whole, then those particular things would impact an individual that was impacted by this to be able to speak up again in the future. So it's sort of like, again, it's around building this relationship, and it's also around building an experience. So if I was going to say, what is psychological safety? It is around building relationships, and it's around building experiences, incredible experiences for people, so that they're not going to be going away and they're going to be feeling like they're, had hardship, and etc.
Yeah. So it's interesting. As an agile coach, I am seeing that psychological safety and building those relationships impact the whole organization top down. And when we talk about those important things as such psychological safety and being able to speak freely and not being afraid of exposing yourself, expose your mistakes to others and ask for help, you need to be absolutely confident. And that seems to be important as in leadership teams, as for employees who are pretty much leading the development of products and services. So it's important to understand it in details. So if we dive a little bit deeper, what are the factors that can impact psychological safety of employees within an organization?
Well, you know what, I can totally jump into those, but I think that one thing I want to sort of talk about first is that, my belief when I think about all of this is that every single human experience from birth to death for each and every one of us either improves or impairs our mental well-being. So it's like foundational to every single experience that we go through in our life. And, if you think about it, like over 60% of our population is at work. There's about 8 billion people on the planet. That leaves about 5 billion people that are working every single day. And, if we look at about average of 40 hours per week, we're looking at over 2,000 hours in a year that we're actually going to be at work. So when you think about it from that perspective, that's a lot of time where an individual's mental well-being can either be improved or impaired. And so, to kind of jump into what we just talked about in terms of the factors, is that when we think about the, there's actually, there's around 12 or 13 factors really that determine this, based on the Psychological Safety Guide of Canada. And, so I'm just going to list them kind of real quick, and then I'm going to kind of give you a summary of what I kind of feel where they can kind of all jump into. So it's really about And you want to think about it, I want to look at this from this perspective, to go back to the mental well-being. And if we say the factors that, impact psychological safety, let's talk about the factors, how they impact the mental well-being of employees. So how is it that each things here impact the mental well-being? Are they going to impair it, or are they going to improve it? Okay, so work and life balance, civility and respect, clear leadership and expectations, engagement, growth and development, involvement and influence, protection of physical safety, psychological and social support, psychological competencies and support, psychological protection, recognition and reward, and workload management. So those are some really big piece ones. And if I was going to summarize it simply, I would just say that big picture is we've got an organizational culture. Think of that as like the rule book for an organization. Okay, so then we've got leadership. Leadership works with employees. They co-create these rules, and they also co-create how they're actually going to engage with these rules. And then if we think about communication, it's going to be, how is the rule book going to be communicated to the organization? And then if we think about support, how are we going to support the individuals within this organization so that they are prepared to be able to be basically commit and be accountable to the rules? So hopefully that helps you around the factors. Those are definitely things that can impact it for sure. And of course, I'd mentioned earlier bad behavior, talking about obviously bullying, abuse, harassment, and discrimination. And that I really want to throw that out for the individuals at the respect group. That's something they talk about a lot, is the bad behavior. So something that we should all be thinking about.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Mike, it sounds like the psychological safety is not only a job of human resource department, but it's kind of like everybody's job to maintain and support and nurture, I would say, because everything that people do is kind of immersed in the culture, in the effective culture. And I apologize, I didn't ask you in the very beginning about the services you provide and your experience. Maybe you can just say a couple of words so the people who are maybe join the call a little bit later, they understand what you do.
Yeah, so as really as a human performance coach, what I do is I like to meet with people, and I'm really a strategist. If I'm in, on the weekend, I was working with I have a 7-year-old son, he's in U7 to 9 soccer. I coach elite level athletes. I work with executives. I work with business individuals. Really it all comes down to is it comes back to the same thing. I'm working with individuals to look at, again, how can I improve or impair or, avoid impairing their mental well-being? What is it that we can do in order to allow that individual so that they can constantly improve their mental well-being and diminish the things that are impairing it? So as a performance coach, that's really what I would like to do. And I utilize strategies, for companies. If I was looking at an organization, if I was looking at an individual around a coaching package, it'd be around how can we get an individual from here to a 4-year goal of, say, the Olympics, or cycling world championships, or running Boston Marathon. And to be honest, my son, how can I work with 7, 8-year-olds, and we can make it so they can enjoy the time, to go back to what we're trying to do here. We're trying to actually have a situation and experience, a positive experience for this individual, and we're trying to build relationships in the meantime. So it all really kind of goes hand in hand to how I do it, and I do that through workshops and private coaching sessions and team coaching. So thank you for asking, Vladimir.
My pleasure, Mike. And it sounds like you are helping organizations on a large scale. You create a strategic plan for executive team to implement, as well as helping teams to get the knowledge and the skills, and also you are helping individuals if there is any coaching needed, so you can also do that. And I would like to remind everybody that during our conversation, you can put your questions in the chat, and I'm watching the chat, and we'll be I'm reading the questions for Mike if you would like to have any questions addressed right away. And I would like to remind that in the end, by the way, you can reach out to Mike directly after the call, and for me, obviously, after the call, if you have further questions, even if you watch this offline about psychological safety and how to implement in a large organization. And also stay tuned till the very end, because we do drawing with some exciting prizes. So I'm going to move on. And the next question I would like to ask, because this is so important for organizations, seems like, especially now, so becoming more important, having psychological safety in place. What problems will be solved by having a psychological safe organization, and what advantages the company may have by having the psychological safety at a high level?
You know what? I think a lot of the problems, I mean, so I've been in the wellness industry. I started off in 1993, working in many different organizations over the years, many different things like that. Oftentimes, like if we were going to have a discussion with individuals that are probably on this call right now, one of the challenges is support. Okay, so how can we actually get the organizational support? And people would call it the buy-in kind of thing, right? And I think it's the approach, to be honest. So if I was going to look at sort of like, to go back to what you talked about, like, what are the sort of struggles? I think it's the approach in which we're going at it. Again, to go back to the very beginning, to sort of reiterate what I said, is that psychological safety, wellness, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, respect in the workplace, code of conduct, all the other pieces of the employee life cycle, those are all things that are tactics. And they really need to be driven by an employee experience strategy. I mean, I could probably write on a gum wrapper right now, like organizational chart for how this could really operate and really hit it out of the park. And I guess when I talk about those particular challenges, what happens is it eliminates conversations around budget. It eliminates conversations around, when you look at different parts and pieces of the employee life cycle, everyone's trying to accomplish the same thing, but oftentimes people aren't talking to each other. So, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, wellness, all these incredible things that we're trying to really get out to the world, whether it be, through employee value proposition, or we really want to fine tune in our recruitment processes or in our trainings. All of those things everyone needs to be in the room together. So by bringing together everyone of the employee life cycle, we're then now collaborating. We're getting rid of the barriers that exist because people aren't talking to each other. And to go back to the budget thing, is that we're no longer talking about putting in a wellness budget, a diversity, equity, inclusion budget, something around, I mean, you name it. We're talking about one budget here, employee experience. Again, what we're trying to do with that is that, and again, this is all, to get rid of the problems that we're all facing, is that we want to make our employee value proposition, everything that we've got written on our website, to be realistic to what it is in the organization. So this really is the way to do it, is by bringing all of these pieces together, getting everyone in the same room to really talk about this, imagine what they would like the employee experience to look like. And then also we've got collaboration, we've got people working together. That's really going to knock it out of the park. So to be honest, that's sort of the solutions that would come from both doing it well and then putting it all together.
Yeah, definitely. Well, employee engagement and employee well-being are becoming more and more important, and collaboration today, especially in the innovation intense projects and environments like software development, for example, collaboration is so key. We really cannot miss on that. At the same time, I'm curious, and maybe some of the people on the call would be curious, If somebody would say like, well, we already have enough collaboration, we already have enough engagement, maybe it's optional. So do you think that psychological safety is something that companies may consider as optional?
I think the way I need to talk about this is psychological safety is a performance enhancer. Okay. And I mean, it's just coming to my head right now, but I mean, I'm sure everybody is well aware of the Lance Armstrong, kerfuffle of many years ago. They were talking about cheating in the Tour de France, using EPO, which EPO is called Epotian. And the thing is that particular product, okay, was like a performance enhancer. So if I look back at so we've got that situation there where we've got this. What it does is EPO is it allows for more oxygen to be put into the body. It's going to be processed, so it's going to generate more oxygen inside of the bone marrow. That's then going to increase the performance of this individual. I really think is that psychological safety is the EPO of cultural development. The performance of a culture could literally be increased in that same rate and speed. Because you think about it, and I think I'm going to share a personal story here, to be honest. My mother passed away in 1993. She died of a stroke. And if I think about that situation didn't happen overnight. What happened is over a number of years, we had blood cells that started to build up along the line of the arteries, and it started to build up. Well, if we look at that from an organization standpoint, if we've got a situation where we've got, that bad behavior or all of those factors that I mentioned earlier that are happening to, say, an individual like myself. So if I go into work and all of a sudden I constantly get pecked at, the death by 1,000 cuts, and I start to build up, this lining of the walls of my arteries, okay, as a visual, okay. And so I start to have performance, like personal performance starts to drop off from an actual physiology standpoint. I'm starting to show symptoms that I'm starting to no longer be healthy. My oxygen levels are lower, etc. And then when that day hits, I should back that up and say that, when that individual is starting to deteriorate their performance, we're going to start talking about absenteeism. We're going to talk about presenteeism. We obviously had this whole thing about quiet quitting, which really is just a fancy way of saying presenteeism. So an individual was once upon a time really committed and dedicated, but their mental well-being started to diminish as they started to get the 1,000 cuts. So as, unfortunately with my mother, she had a stroke. That again happened over a long period of time. What's happening in organizations right now is that we've got these individuals that are getting particular things that are happening to them. And one day they have the stroke. They decide they're going to go on medical leave. They decide that they're going to, look for a new job. They're going to decide to leave the organization. So those are kind of the big things that happen. And sorry, to bring back to your question again, Vladimir, if you want to just repeat it, just so I don't get off track here. I think you were talking about kind of, why is it really important to have this? Again, it's a performance enhancer. And if I look back at that situation with the stroke, I said earlier, EPO is sort of like the performance enhancer part. Well, psychological safety is like the aspirin to a person that's about to have a stroke. It's going to thin the blood. It's going to get rid of all of that stuff that's about to clot and basically eliminate that person from our planet. So psychological safety is about how can we embed all of this incredible stuff into an organization where we can again create incredible relationships and create incredible experiences. And and in turn we can end up having it so that we're not going to be having these particular arduous events that are happening throughout organizations at this time.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Your analogy is really telling, because what I can see as an agile coach in many organizations, those simple, the symptoms include delayed projects and death marches and backlogs of a lot of work, getting clogged up, and there are contract renegotiations with the clients, and organizations getting slow. There's a lot of door-to-door battles going on when managers ask for help from each other, and other symptoms, and it happens slowly. So the people in the organization may get used to that and think like nothing extravagant is going on. But for an outsider who just comes to the company and look at with the fresh eyes is so telling. You can tell right away that, yeah, this organization really needs to start resolving issues, and people need to start speak freely, and people needs to start articulating those small issues that they have daily. So that aspirin is getting delivered to the patient to get the fresh blood flow, and improve the stream of work, and get the organization back on its feet and to its performance potential. So it's really telling me that psychological safety is an essential part. So if you can consider optional or not optional, I would say it will be a suicide to not consider psychological safety in organization, and just kind of putting it on the back of the backlog and say, well, we address that sometime in the future. So no, actually, it's everybody's job every day to work on that, and especially leadership needs to pay attention to that. And I heard that there is some regulation about psychological. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I heard that also there's some regulations, maybe in Europe, maybe not in the US. But did you hear anything about that?
So psychological safety is currently legislated underneath a number of other different legislations. But right now, around the globe, starting in Australia, parts of Europe, US did a big announcement last year. Canada, I mean, we've actually brought about all of this information around psychological safety and developing the psychological safety guide, as it would be, back in the early 2000s. So, I mean, one thing to back this up is that psychological safety, to go back to what I said earlier, has been around for our entire existence. It's the foundation of every single relationship. It's the foundation of every experience that we've ever had in our entire life. And so what, Abby Edmondson would have done was she came up with a particular title for this topic. And all of this legislation around this is around how can we look at human rights and how can we support the human rights of individuals as we start to expand through our growth in this world, where we start to look at, there's a number of different things that are growing beyond what we would have ever expected. Thank you, Gen X. Thank you, millennials. You're doing an amazing job of getting us to be accountable for what we should have been accountable 100 years ago. But the thing is that we're starting to, in the next 5 years for sure, I can assure you that legislation is going to be in place in all of the major countries around the world, and thankfully, it's going to make it so that when I look at organizational psychological safety, obviously I look at it from a really foundational piece of relationships and experiences, but I look at it about commitment and accountability. It's like we're going to make a commitment to our people. We're going to say that I, CEO, am committed to you as our organization, and that we are going to ensure that each and every one of you is going to be accountable for your actions. So legislation is coming. I said to someone in a very high position probably 6 years ago that it's time to put the eye on psychological health and safety, because at that time I would have said within the next 10 years, and we're spot on. Australia, East Coast of Australia, completely psychological safe driven, all legislated. It's coming hot and fast. So it's not optional. It never has been. It never will be. And literally, it's kind of like saying optional is like saying we could live without oxygen, because as I said earlier, If you have the stroke, you
Yeah.
die because you have no oxygen.
Yeah.
Organizations die because they don't have oxygen, as do their people.
Yeah, it will be very hard to compete. And I'm assuming that in a few years, we'll be considering psychological safety from the compliance perspective as well. So I guess.
Yeah, it's already in occupational health and safety. It certainly is, and it's just expanding. It's just there's a realization now that we've got physical safety, psychological safety. They're both important. We're dealing with two things right now. One from the standpoint of like legislation and really kind of making them sort of equals. And then there's also the point of stigma, where if someone had a broken arm or if they had cancer, well, they're allowed to be away from work. Or if you were sick with the flu, you're allowed to be away from work. We're just getting to the point now where we say, yeah, we can have a sick day because we're not healthy today. We're not able to drive the truck that you want us to drive safely because our mental health is not appropriate. You don't want us to make billion-dollar decisions with a brain that is not mentally well. This is the process that we're starting to go through. It's always been there. We're just starting to make people accountable for those actions.
Yeah.
And one thing I need to say, Vladimir, is that we're putting a lot of pressure on our organizations right now. Organizations are not responsible for everything. Basically, what we're saying is that we people come into an organization, we're under one roof. If we can think of it as like this big sandbox we all play in every day. It's not around making it so that this is a safe environment where everyone's comfortable and no one has to worry about things. What we're saying is that we've got individuals that are coming in here, and when they're here, the organization is going to do their darndest to make sure that they're not going to get harmed in the process of coming to work. That's really important. There's going to be no further damage to that individual than when they come to work. Because remember, they're coming to work over 2,000 hours a year, and you want them performing their absolute best.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I guess this is what you would say to employees or leaders who think psychological safety is just another flavor of the month initiative, right?
Well, and you know what I would say to that, if I had an individual that talked about it in that sense, the thing is that to go back to this idea around psychological safety being in everything that we do, if there was a mother, father, or something like that, or there's individuals out there that have family or people that are really important to them, let's just pretend for a second, from a kid's standpoint, if there was a child that was under the guidance of a coach, okay, and this poor kid, hurt their knee while they're in practice. But if a week earlier they saw another kid get berated about how they need to suck it up and they need to get practicing whether they're hurt or not, that is directly going to impact the way that poor child makes their decisions, whether they're sick, whether they're injured, it doesn't matter. So if they don't think, people in the audience don't think that it applies to them, it applies to all of us, because there's every single part and piece of our world is going to determine that psychological safety. Because again, to go back to the simplicity of it, it's a relationship. It's again trying to get rid of that fear to have a conversation. And if that poor kid is unable to talk to their coach and say, I'm injured, and they're also not able to talk to their parents because the parents may have the same philosophy, or if you put it into the environment where it's now at work, if someone out in the audience was again thinking, oh, this is just another flavor of the month, what happens if their wife or significant other was working at an organization that was getting impacted by bad behavior? Would it then be the flavor of the month? Or is that going to be something now that has touched home and now is a reality for that individual? And again, if we want to look at how do we actually improve the situation, we improve relationships and we improve the experiences. It's as simple as that. So, psychological safety is not this big, complicated beast, as I kind of said in the beginning. It's got to be embedded or infused into every single experience that happens within an organization, or within every single experience that each and every one of us have outside of an organization. That's going to determine our psychological health. Everything determines our mental well-being. Impair or improve. It's that simple.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as you were speaking about this, I recalled the statistics that I learned from Crucial Conversations training when they say that there is a huge number of deaths happening in hospitals due to human error. And why is that happening? Because people don't have skills aligned with psychological safety. So, for example, a nurse might be uncomfortable, speaking up and noticing the errors that the doctor or surgeon may make, and due to certain culture, for example, the colleagues cannot challenge each other just about the simple thing like washing hands. And it's amazing how many different injuries and different accidents happen or could be prevented if psychological safety was in place. It's amazing. And at this point, I wanted to remind everybody, I'm checking the questions. I don't see any questions or comments in the chat. I would like to encourage everybody who are listening to us on the call, and I'm seeing it's about 22 people there on the call right now. So please type in psychological safety is if you think our conversation is relevant, please type in your questions as well. And if you have questions about psychological safety and how to implement it in your organization, or maybe you would like to get coaching around that, feel free to reach out to Mike or myself, and we'll be happy to help your questions answered. And at this point, I would like to move on to more of a how questions to understand better of what needs to be done by the companies, and what maybe also what companies may struggle with while building and implementing and maintaining the strategy of psychological safety.
Okay, so really we're talking about what could we do and what are the struggles. I think right now there is a lot of really good effort that is put into psychological safety. There's a lot of really good effort put into diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and really trying to, how can we actually support the 8 dimensions of personal wellness or employee wellness. So there's a lot of stuff that's really in place, and I would say that the biggest struggle is, again, to go back to what I talked about earlier, the individuals that are so passionate about each and every one of these areas, as they should be, because as I've indicated, they're performance enhancement tools for employees and leaders. It's about let's get together, let's come together, and let's all talk about how we can put this into the employee life cycle. It is so important. I know that I've said this multiple times along the way, but the reason that I constantly say that is, in my experience, again, I started in this industry 30 years ago, and it is just coming to the point now. We're right on the apex of where we're starting to finally get it. I mean, I've been talking about this kind of a concept for a large number of years now, and honestly, the world wasn't really ready for it. And I some days even now feel like the world isn't ready for what we're talking about, the approach in which we're doing it. But for those individuals that are out in the audience that are having the constant struggle around wellness programs being budget cut, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging programs cut, anything to do with how can we support the employee along the life cycle, if those that parts are getting cut, we need to bring it back to the big picture. We need to bring it all together. We need to huddle as a big one force, and we need to be able to eliminate all of those struggles that we're having, because when we're all together, when we start to embed that into the employee life cycle, we're now not talking about an initiative like something that, in the world of companies or organizations, wellness. I know that the employee wellness adaptation or adoption is not very high in organizations. I mean, we can see that time and time again. It's not that it's not important, it's the way it's delivered. And when I think about how we can actually make some improvements, some drastic improvements in the world right now, and large organizations or small organizations abroad, It's going to be about how can we have this one big message where the leaders of an organization would want to listen, because we've now made it so that what we're doing is we're saying all of these incredible offerings, all these incredible employee experiences, they are going to be things that we are going to hand deliver right from where we start to recruit employees, all the way into onboarding, all the way into training, all the way into, you know, the further processes throughout. And when an individual exits, it's because they want to expand with their career. They want to go on to a new organization, not because they're running away screaming, because they've been lied to, because the employee value proposition does not match what they're witnessing inside of an organization. These are the types of things that we'll be able to accomplish if we all work together within an organization, or as professionals in the industry that are trying to get our message out there. It's time to all come together. It's all get our products, services, deliverables into the employee life cycle, employee experience strategy.
That's great. So that strategy you implement or help leaders to implement is looking like a plan that the leaders can take, and you kind of break it down to make it easy for the leadership team to understand what steps need to be done.
Well, you know, to go back to the very beginning, when we, you know, say what psychological safety is not, well, again, it's not this this strategy, but what I basically do when I work with an organization is that I come in there, and I'm not the expert in every single part and piece of the employee life cycle. That's not my role. My role is to come into an organization and, you know, first, you know, the way that I do it, okay, it all starts with a phone call. Let's have a discovery call. We just talk about what is it the organization would like to do? What is the goals that we would like to accomplish? That could be with one individual. It could be with your entire team of 28 employee experience leaders in your organization that you have from every single part and piece. We come together on a call. We talk about how we move forward. I have a couple of workshops where we basically look there. We sort of imagine what the incredible employee experiences and incredible culture we would all want it to look like. Because, you know, all of us have sort of an idea as part of the employee life cycle, what we want people to experience, what relationship they want to have when they come into the organization. So we're basically saying, okay, we've all got the same common goal. Let's come together, talk about how we can imagine that. The next workshop would go into how can we create this as a team? And it's at that point there where an organization has the option, where when they're working with me, would they like support as they go through this journey? Because this is not going to happen overnight. I mean, I hate to use that analogy that I mentioned earlier, like the stroke. The stroke took a long time to occur, okay? An organization's change is not going to happen overnight. We are going to remove the plaque that has been accumulated in the arteries, the atherosclerosis that is contained in the arteries, and we're going to remove that, and we're going to come out the other end with this this organization that now has an intentional approach to what their culture is that they want it to look like. And at that point, again, the crossroads where if they would like me to work with them, I'm absolutely, you know, there and available. If they would like to go on their own, that's completely fine, because those workshops set them up with exactly what they need to do to go on their own. I'm just there as an expert to support them along the journey. So it's lots of options out there that I can definitely support people with things. And of course, the other part of this that I didn't really get into, but we always talk about culture, and we always talk about psychological safety. Well, there's two different cultures and there's two different psychological safeties. We've got two different cultures, which is organizational culture, and we've got team culture. We have got organizational psychological safety, and we've got team psychological safety. The team psychological safety is the one that is going to give us the 1,000 cuts if we are not prepared, because that's where you're going to have the daily interactions that are going to potentially impact the way you are now potentially impairing your mental well-being. Those are the parts where I can also help an organization is I work with leaders, and we create leaders to be psychologically safe leaders, understand what psychological safety is, and then take those individuals. We then co-create their team into how they would like to function as a psychologically safe team. And this is really, really, really important. And again, when we look at doing like a big overhaul within an organization, it's going to be talking about how are we going to do this as an organization, and how is each of the different teams within the organization going to slowly immerse this within their own team culture.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely important. Do you think you could advise what could be the most overlooked step while improving organizational health and psychological safety, even that the organization is trying to do it on your own without involving a specialist like you?
The number one step organizations are not doing, and this one's free: get everyone in a room. Get all of the people that are contributing to the employee life cycle in one room, virtually or in person. Get them on a phone, go into pods, talk about what it is that you imagine this to be. Talk about all those things that you're probably complaining about to each other in various different forms and shapes, but get in there and talk. And you will quickly realize how, as I mentioned earlier, psychological safety, having a relationship with all of those individuals that are trying to accomplish the same thing and creating experiences together is going to provide you with an opportunity to come out the other end with results. Just that one step alone is going to give you success. And when you're all coming together, drive that into one strategy. That would be my one big tip. And that is a very big tip.
Oh, that's very true, Mike. I rarely saw something like that being happening or being championed by senior leadership. Usually what we get is a leadership call when senior leaders sit and report on the achievements of the year and answering employee questions, and that goes for 1 hour, and everybody's looking so great and achievements so high, and everything is just so brilliant that and maybe some questions are asked and answered by employees, but overall there's no space for people to really kind of vent and say like, hey, we're tired of this process that you're doing and something isn't happening or something like that. That's great. So we kind of need to wrap it up, and I would like to ask you the last question. And I'm looking at the chat and I'm not seeing any other questions so far, but just want to ask you last one. In the end, what is the one practical advice that you can give to the senior leaders who will be watching this call, maybe offline, or would like to learn more about this?
I would put that into sort of like a three-part answer. So if I was looking at a situation where we have leaders on the call that aren't necessarily directly attached to the employee life cycle, then what I would say for those individuals, let's go back to the simple parts here, which is, okay, within your team, let's work on creating relationships. And I'm going to say it like this: create shovel friends. For those of you who do not know what a shovel friend is, it's the person that you call in the middle of the night to take care of things. Okay, so it's that person you can always count on. So if you currently are a leader and you have a team of 20 individuals and you've only got 2 shovel friends in there, your goal from now to the end of 2023 is to get 18 more shovel friends, people that will do absolutely anything for you. You will know that you are the best leader possible, a psychologically safe leader, when all of those 20 team members will do anything for you. They are not complaining about the extra time they need to do for particular parts of the year, etc. If you are having a struggle with that process, again, I've already mentioned, I do have workshops that I'd be able to work with you as a leader and also as a team. The next part, if you are part of the employee life cycle and you're really looking for support, again, I can walk you through. That first important part is going to be that discovery call. Let's talk about it. at that point, you're going to have all sorts of different options and things that you can go down. It's not just going to be me involved. I've got tons of individuals that you can support you in any part and piece of the employee life cycle, any part and piece around creating psychologically health and safety environments. And then if you've also got a situation where, okay, you've just listened to this talk, you just want to just, go and do your own thing, it comes back to relationships. So creating incredible relationships and creating incredible experiences. And remember, every single experience, every single relationship, everything that we do either improves or impairs our mental well-being. So anything that is going to impair your mental well-being in the process of the employee life cycle or in your life in general, eliminate that, and you will all of a sudden be a better person and have a better team and a better organization.
Amazing. That's very insightful. Thank you so much, Mike. It's a profound lesson that in order to better, you don't need to add, you need to remove something. You need to remove the plug and then you'll perform better. Stop adding, start removing. So that's very interesting. And thank you so much, Mike, for all the people who are listening, who are watching. I'd like to remind on this call that if you have additional questions or need help with establishing and maintaining psychological safety, you can reach out directly through LinkedIn. Click on Mike's or my profile page and press message button and send a simple message. Hey, I need help. I have a question, and Mike will be happy to reach out. And Mike, sounds like we need to wrap up. So is it about the time you want to announce the drawing? And
yeah, I think that's it's an incredible time to announce the drawing. Not too sure how many people are on here, but I know one thing, that they're going to be quite excited about this. So the secret is, so if for those of you that would have seen a posting that I finally put out again today as sort of a reminder around the presentation, so you can, that particular posting on there will have all of the instructions that I'm about to talk about. But the first thing is, we've got these incredible prizes, 2 grand prizes that Vladimir and I are going to be offering up to the participants that are in the audience today. Three different things we're just looking for is just, so you've done the first thing, you've attended the workshop. Okay, so now the next thing is that if you can go on to my Mental Wellbeing for Life business page on LinkedIn, and if you could put on there 2 to 3 of your greatest learnings from today's presentation, and there's some hashtags that are specifically marked in that last posting, but I think Vladimir is about to also enter those onto the chat as well. And then the final step is, if you go onto Mental Wellbeing for Life, my website, there is a 2-minute survey that is on the strategy page, and it is going to be, is your organization psychologically safe? 14 questions, takes you less than 2 minutes. It's going to give you a sense about how you feel about your organization currently, and it's going to give us some insight to potentially have that first call around discovery, see what you might need for your organization, and that's really going to be it. The main thing is by the end of day on Monday, I can't believe I'm saying it, March the 6th, you'll have until that day to get all of your jobs done here. And then we will be doing an announcement of the winners on March the 8th, Wednesday, March the 8th, by the end of the day, by 4:30. And I will do that on the Mental Wellbeing for Life business page. So I guess drum roll, please. Vladimir, would you like to announce the prizes, or would you like me to?
oh, please do.
Okay, so from Vladimir, those individuals, again, you get entered in the draw for this, a Persuasion Powerful Guide coaching call with Vlad for those who would like to grow influencing skills while building relationships. Okay, so again, we'll have the winner of this will be announced on Wednesday, March the 8th by 4:30. And for the individual that draws the prize from me, for Mental Wellbeing for Life, imagine your mental well-being focused culture, or imagine yourself in a mental well-being focused employee experience strategy package, including a 60-minute discovery call and a half day or full day, depending on how large your group is, workshop for leaders, that are directly responsible for influencing your organization's incredible employee experiences. So if you have someone or a couple people from every part and piece of the employee life cycle, and you bring them into a workshop, we'll talk about how we're going to imagine the incredible culture and experiences that you're going to provide for your people. And that is the great prizes there for you, Vlad.
Thank you. That's exciting. And I actually put the URL in the chat. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like a link, but you can copy that. Maybe I will try to do HTTP in front of it to make it a URL. No, you actually have to copy and paste that. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's okay.
So just get it from the chat, post it there, and go to in your browser link in the browser URL, paste in there and go to that page and fill out the survey. And thank you so much, everybody, for your time, for your interest and your participation. We didn't have a lot of questions, but I'm assuming that it needs to, we need to take time to process information. And if you provide some comments, feedback, questions offline, that's totally fine. Please stay tuned. We will have exciting episodes coming up the following week. So next week, we are going to talk about effective de-escalation techniques with the CEO of the International De-Escalation Association. And the following week, we'll talk about the future of collaboration with the CEO of Jump Room, breakthrough remote collaboration tool. Tomorrow, I'm holding a Q&A on effective communication at work. You can find my event on my profile page, or shoot me a message. I will send you a link about this. So again, drawing reminder, don't forget to go to the page and provide your takeaways, 2-3 learnings and survey. And Mike, thank you so much for today's conversation. It was amazing. And I'm so excited to about this conversation and maybe something that might come out of that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vladimir, for having me, and thank you for everyone that attended this presentation. Honestly, I always say this, and I always think that people think I'm kidding here. We are truly in this together. This is not a me process. I mean, there's hundreds of individuals like myself out there that are all talking the same language. Vladimir, of course, is one of them. We're all in this together. We're going to make some really positive change in this area. And we want to do it because it's good for the people, not because the law is telling us to do it. I think that's going to be an important part of this whole process. It always goes back to the relationships and the experiences that we'll have, and we want to have great ones. So thank you very much, Vladimir, and thank you to everyone out in the audience. And if anyone would like to connect with me after this, I would absolutely love to hear from you. So thank you very much.